Okay, so now that we've got our player running and jumping, let's actually try something that we haven't actually tested yet. Uh, the player currently can jump really high and it works and everything, but one of the parts in development is to actually start considering the other elements inside of the game. So, for instance, in Mario, there's definitely going to be some bricks or blocks or things that are above the character as they're walking around. And for the Mario character, if we were to put a block above him and jump, so for instance, we crouch and jump, do you see how long he stays up there? He's actually staying the full length of the height of the jump, so he's hanging out longer than he should be when he actually hits the block. If we want to make sure that we control that element of it, this is one of those parts. Again, is where I would say, if you want to try it, it's just going to be a few lines of code, but see if you can figure it out. What is it that's actually happening? When he jumps, it hits. Say, for instance, here he's going at about a probably about around a 7 or so for his height, and he still has 8, 9, and 10 to go before he gets to the actual height. Well, if we want him to hit and then actually just go back down right after the hit, try to figure out what it is you'd look for. See if there's something on the character controller. See if there's something in code you could come up with so that when a collision occurs on the top of the head, that it actually forces him back down so he doesn't hang and kind of float up there for a while. So if you want, try to think about it. If you're not really sure about it, I'd still suggest spend 5 minutes at least, spend 10 minutes looking it over. If you want to dig into some of the scripting reference for a while, that'd be a great idea. Once you're done, you can just come back and start working on this next part. I'll go ahead and go through the part right now. What I would do if it was me trying to figure it out, I'd probably go to the character controller, and on the character controller, I would be looking for something that sounded like a collision or something similar to it. And we've got one, let's see, detect collision. This one sounds like it would be, so others should have rigid bodies, probably not wanting something that complicated. We have on controller collider hits, sending a message out. We've got any collision flags. Now that actually sounds a little bit more in line with what we're thinking of in terms of being able just to have some type of feedback come back for us. Let's see, what part of the capsule collided with the environment during the last move call? So this is, since we're using the .move, we actually have access to this. So let's go ahead and click on this one. And it sounds like, even from the looks of it, let's see, character controller flags, we've got a collision flag above. So if we click on this one, maybe we'll get a little bit more information on it. So notice our collision flags actually has multiple options. We've got sides, we have none, above, and below. Well, our character controller on the above part is what we're looking for. We want it to actually hit the head. So as a test, you could easily just put in if the controller collision flag is hitting, we say is equal to the above moment. So if its flag is equal to above, then we could print something just to see if it works. So let's jump back into the code here. And on this part, I actually want it to be right before, like, based on everything here, the last step that we want to actually have happen is this part, to make sure that this is going to get put into it. But right before that, let's actually go ahead and just set up a check for it. We'll just say that if the controller collision, and we've got collision flags right there. So if the collision flags is going to be equal to collision flags dot above. So just like what we have over here, we're just saying that if this is going to be equal to the colliding above where the top of the head is, then let's just do a quick print. Hit my head. Alright, so we're just going to check real fast to see if this is going to work for us. So we'll go back into the game. Let's go ahead and run this one. So what should happen is if I actually hit, you'll notice it actually says hit my head. So that means that I do now have a collision check for above on the collider box. So on my player character, so for the player, on the character controller, when it hits the controller part, then it actually does print out, it hits my head. Alright, so what that means is that if we want to control the character itself, so for instance in here, instead of having a print statement, let's actually, let's set up a variable up here. So up at the top, let's do one more private variable. And this private variable, let's just call this one like a after hit force down or something. So we'll say after the hit, we're gonna force our player down. Alright, and we'll just make this equal to a float type. Set it to a float type, and the amount, let's start off with just 1.0 and we'll see how it goes. So this would be force player down if head hits anything. Now we could be specific with it and say that it can only, that it would only affect if there were certain objects with a label of a type, but we want to kind of make it, we're just going to make it fit any circumstance for it. So anytime he jumps and he hits his head, if he's just automatically going to start going back down. Alright, so if we go back down to the bottom right here, so inside of our check for the collision on the above part, let's actually just set the velocity here. So we're going to set the velocity, the up and down, so the y, just to 0. So we're going to stop the movement. So the moment he hits, if the collision flag is above, then we're going to immediately set his motion up to 0 so that he stops moving upward. And at the same time, let's actually set it so that he starts to move down. So we'll say that velocity y, we're going to say that velocity y is going to be subtracted from the after hit force down. Alright, so this will actually give us a chance to push the character back down. We could even push him down faster than he went up. So if we wanted to kind of play around with the type of material, the type of objects they are, it could be something like when he hits, it actually pushes him down instead of just a regular gravity type going down on it. So for this one, we'll just do we're basically, we're applying a force downward. So player doesn't, there we go, hang in there. Alright, and then for this one, let's see, make sure we got the right thing for it. Alright, so we're just going to set velocity on y to 0, stops upward motion. Alright, so with that one in, let's go ahead and go back to here, and let's play it out and see how it works. So what should happen is when he hits, he immediately drops down. So if you notice, it's a very quick motion now. I'm crouching, so I should be jumping all the way up to there, but it actually stops him and pushes him right back down. Alright, so a little bit more interactive with the scene. It feels a little bit more realistic instead of just kind of floating up there. It feels like once the momentum hits the surface, it's supposed to go down, so it kind of fits into that. Alright, so again, this is just a small tweak to the scene, but it's one of those things that usually, even like when I was first doing this, I wouldn't have noticed until once I had a block inside the scene, and I started jumping around. So some of these things, they may come gradually. It may not be something that you just automatically go to, but when you start playtesting, you get things like that, write them down, start keeping a good list of things that you need corrected, go back and just make the additions, make the corrections to it so it works for it. Alright, so that's going to be the, for at least for the character, that'll be the way to keep the character from floating up in the air and just really provide more of a realistic sense to it. And setting it to a variable, you'll be able to access this and then adjust it if you need to for different types of situations.